Well, welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to see you all here. Before we start official proceedings, I'd like to welcome to the stage Stephanie Skinner, who's a language officer with the Wadawurrung Traditional Owner Aboriginal Corporation, and she will perform our Welcome to Country this afternoon. Stephanie, over to you.
Wadawurrung Murup. Wadawurrung Murup. Murup means Wadawurrung spirit. Wadawurrung spirit. Wadawurrung Jah. Wadawurrung country. The Jari, where we stand today. Narik Stephanie, my name is Stephanie. Wadawurrung Mokburi. Bagaruk Bang. I'm a proud Wadawurrung woman. My mob, my family have been living in Wadawurrung country for the last thousands and thousands of generations, and it's my honour, my privilege to welcome you to country today. I know it might be a bit hard to see for some people, but I carry with me possum skin, a wallet. And that provides a little bit of authority to me to welcome you to country today. I'm very nervous, but it's lovely to see you all enjoying your time, enjoying your food, surrounded by people, surrounded by friends, surrounded by family, surrounded by people that you know. I'd like to welcome you to country. So Nyalingo Kambani Kinkimbil Wadagurunguli Wadawurrung. Nyalingo Kambani Guli Bagaruk Boron Wadawurrung. Gutman Gutma Wadawurrung. I say Kambani Wadawurrung. I'd like to call upon my ancestors, my elders of the past, present and those emerging to join me in spirit in welcoming us all to country today. I welcome all men, women and children to Wadawurrung country today. I say we're here on Wadawurrung country today, joined together in merijig and happiness. But we're also here to celebrate our leaders. We're here to celebrate who we are, what we stand for, and to discuss to discuss country, and what brings us to the future. And that's something that I can stand here and be proud of. And that's something that we can be proud of on Wadawurrung country. So I say Nyatni, thank you. I say merijig and Mokburi, have fun and stand proud. So Kabata, Nyatni, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for your welcome. And the Committee for Geelong also acknowledges the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of the lands, waters, seas and skies on which we operate. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. We acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as Australia's First Nations people. And today we're here to celebrate and contribute part of our history on what is just a dot on the timeline of history as we add that for the Geelong region. A little bit of housekeeping. It's as is normal at these events, the bathrooms are out of that door if you haven't found them already. There are name tags on your tables, and there's also a copy of the Future Geelong publication which appeared in the Geelong Advertiser just over a week ago, and that's for you to take home and as part of our commemoration of our 20th anniversary event here today. Well, we've had a pretty good reaction to that publication. It's an opportunity for us to thank members who contribute to the content and advertising. Some of our local members of Parliament who are here today have also contributed to that publication, and it's a great record of the achievements by the committee and showcase what is possible for the future. Special thanks to Elise Potter, from the editor of the Geelong Advertiser, who stepped in to help us pull all that together, and a thank you to Joel McGuinness, CEO of Geelong Arts Centre, who helped us launch the new incredible design for the Arts Centre that's on the cover of that publication. Well, there's a number of VIPs visiting with us today. I'd like to thank Peter Mannion from the Victorian Ports Victoria, formerly the Victorian Regional Channels Authority, who is our event sponsor today. Thank you, Peter, for your support. Pleased to welcome the Honourable Sarah Henderson, Senator for Victoria. Sarah, welcome to you. Libby Coker, MP, Federal Member for Corangamite. Libby, welcome to you. Christine Cousins, State MP for Geelong, and a great friend of the Committee for Geelong. We have Committee for Geelong Deputy Chair Justin Giddings. We have Treasurer Julie Hunter. I think we have the Deputy Mayor Trent Sullivan. We have Peter Murray. I know Peter's here, I've seen him. And I'm really pleased to welcome the inaugural Chair of the Committee for Geelong, Jim Cousins, who is with us today, who'll have a little bit of speaking time later on, and Janet Dore, who's the former CEO of the TAC, Deputy Chair of the Committee for Geelong, and who is our esteemed keynote speaker today. And Janet, we look forward to hearing your words later. This event's been put together by the work of the Committee for Geelong staff, who have done an absolutely sterling job. I do have to call out one significant apology today, and that's for our CEO, Jen Cromarty, who is unwell. She has a back issue that's preventing her from being mobile, and we wish Jen all the very best and recognise how disappointing it is for her not to be here today as the culmination of not just the 20th anniversary, but what has been a very busy 12 months at the committee. So Jen, to you, I know that Jen's parents are here today, as with her husband Rob. If you could take that message back from us to wish Jen all the best for a speedy recovery, and looking forward to seeing her back soon. I'd also point out that it is Jen's birthday today, so please pass back to her our best wishes for her birthday, and sorry that she can't be here today. I can tell you, of course, that despite Jen being immobile, she's been far from silent as we've been doing the preparations for today, and we thank her for her contribution. We have sitting in the room those people who have assisted us with this event in its planning. Members of the steering committee, Peter Dorling, who's also the inaugural CEO of the Committee for Geelong, Michael Betts, who's a former chair of the Committee for Geelong, Julie Hunter, who's one of my fellow board members, Deb Nash, Dan Simmons, a former chair of the Committee for Geelong, and Bernadette Uzelak, who was an inaugural board member of the Committee for Geelong. So thank you to them for their guidance to get this event up and running. We have a number of other CEOs and dignitaries who grace the pathways of Geelong, and we welcome you here today and thank you for your presence here, and wish you well on your journey. Jim commented to me that one of the significant things that's changed in 20 years is that he doesn't recognise as many people in the room as he once did, and it is pleasing to see that it's quite a young cohort in the room today, and we welcome you here today. Well, these events don't take place without the support of our Corporate Plus sponsors, Bendigo Bank, Bisanella Constructions, GMHBA, NDIS, TAC, Ports Victoria and WorkSafe. It's all right, I've got a couple of things to read out. I think I was wondering where they were. I'd also like to welcome here today Shirley Costa, who's joining us. So Shirley, welcome to you, and to Jill as well. We welcome you, and it's a great honour that this is the first public event that we've had to pay tribute to Frank since his passing earlier in the year. And I'll have a little bit more to say on that just later. But really great pleasure to see you here today, Shirley and Jill, and we look forward to talking to you as the day goes past. I have two messages to read to you in recognition of this event. The first is from the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. As you celebrate the 20th anniversary, I'm delighted to send this message of support to the Committee for Geelong and to the people of the magnificent city and region that you serve. These are tough times where the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic continue to be felt across our nation, including periods of lockdown in Victoria. When the COVID-19 pandemic began, I said that Australians were about to discover how strong we are. We did find that strength, and it continues to sustain us. Geelong is no exception. On the traditional lands of the Wadawurrung people, the city draws wealth from the ocean and the land, but always and above all, its greatest resource is its people. I wish to thank the residents of Geelong for your courage in helping chart a course to the other side, for arming yourselves with the vaccine, our doses of hope, and for complying with public health orders, for resolutely pushing through. In your fortitude and resilience and care and compassion for each other, you maintain confidence and build hope in your community. Looking to the future, the Committee for Geelong's priorities, transport, infrastructure, planning for population growth, are all critically important in claiming that new ground and inspiring change. And partnerships with this government have been pivotal to progress. Together we are revitalising the City of Geelong and the broader regional economy and investing in faster congestion-free travel. It's a shared endeavour to face the challenges of now and create a prosperous future. Congratulations again to the Committee for Geelong. Your intimate regional knowledge, extensive research and advocacy are helping to construct a world-class city of strength and purpose. And that is signed the Honourable Scott Morrison MP, Prime Minister of Australia. So, Sarah, I think we would ask you to please pass our thanks back to the Prime Minister for that message. So, thank you. I also have a message here from the Premier of Victoria, the Honourable Dan Andrews MP. Congratulations to the Committee for Geelong on your 20th anniversary. Your leadership and support of the Geelong community over the past 20 years, but in particular over the course of the pandemic, is valued by all Victorians. Geelong's voice has been strengthened by the work you do every day to advocate for your community and its citizens. Thank you to your board, members, staff and volunteers for everything you do to make Geelong the great city it is today. And that's signed by Dan Andrews. So Christine, likewise, if you could please pass our thanks back to him for that message. Well, next Thursday, the 16th of December, is our 2021 program participant graduation for the current Leaders for Geelong cohort. I know that there's at least one table in the room of past leaders cohorts. I'm expecting they'll be noisy by the end of the event, but welcome to you. Thank you. You wouldn't disappoint. The Leaders for Geelong program continues to be a showcase for teaching new leaders in our community. And that event next Thursday, if you haven't bought a ticket and you're available, please make sure you come and see if you can attend. Tracy Slater, the Managing Director of Bar and Water, will be the guest speaker. Well, right now, my job's for the introduction is done. Please take this opportunity to catch up with those who you haven't seen for a while. We have a short video playing of the 2020 Paco Festa projections, which was sponsored by the Committee for Geelong this year. This was a commissioned artwork that features an audio-visual display celebrating members of Geelong's diverse ethnic communities. Produced by local projection artist Matt Bonner, the display showcases 30 people from local ethnic communities in the form of iconic portraits taken by local photographer Chrissy Francis. Each person featured explains the significance of their national dress and what their culture means to them. Please enjoy that while we begin our lunch, and I'll be back to talk to you shortly. Thank you. Hey, Jana, can you ring the bell? I've discovered that Janet Dore has a skill that's very important to the Committee for Geelong, and that's ringing the bell. Hopefully the glass lasts for the rest of the event. So, look, everybody, welcome again. 2021 is the 20th anniversary of the Committee for Geelong, and it's been wonderful to join with those past chairs and members to reflect on the work of the committee. And we're reminded that our task, Justin Giddings was trying to steal this quote, but he did finally attribute it to Peter Dorling, who said that it's actually our task to bring the ideas of the world to Geelong as we advocate for economic and social prosperity for the region, and that's our job. The current political cycle has both state and federal elections occurring within 12 months next year, and that'll coincide with the committee's current strategic framework. And it's been important for us to align our priorities to that cycle and to look at how we manage growth in Geelong to be a clever and creative community. As we sit here today, Geelong is one of the fastest growing regions in Australia. Its growth rate of 2.7% outstrips Melbourne, and we predict that the population of Geelong will exceed 500,000 people by 2047. That's obviously the greater Geelong region. Well, growth brings challenges, and we want to work to make Geelong a clever and creative city, while the region has to continue to do things to maintain its livability. That's one of its key attributes. People like to live, work, socialise, play here. That's what brings people to Geelong, and they're coming here in increasing numbers. Livability is economic and social, and it requires infrastructure to support it. And our advocacy to all levels of government will be around what's the infrastructure to support that. And we're grateful for those things that have already been committed, but that includes development in the Northern Growth Area, Armstrong Creek, and other areas in Geelong. We're completely in agreement that we want the CBD to grow in its population from a residential of 2 to 12,000 people, but that requires new solutions for inner city development. We're grateful for the participation we have in the Central Geelong Framework planning arrangements, and we contribute our ideas and build on things like Vision 2, which was a document that was prepared back in 2013 that mapped things like the Green Spine project that has been started in the CBD. We look forward to when all parts of City Deal 1 are delivered. We welcome faster rail solutions. Yes, we don't yet have a national fast rail network, Jim, but other infrastructure is a key to that development, and it's things that we will continue to advocate for. Our key ports, both sea and air, Avalon and Geelong, will be required to manage increasing traffic, both freight and passengers, and infrastructure to support that is critically important to what we do. Of course, working from home post-COVID will in itself present changes to the way we work and how we manage that. Shopping precincts will be different and will change. Shared office hubs is something that we think is a great idea to bring workers together. A clever and creative city, a UNESCO City of Design, will build on its library and its arts centre, and we're really grateful to see the plans released for the development of the arts centre, and at the AGM we saw presentation of the pitch for the art gallery to ask for state government funding for its next stage of development. Well, if the role of the Committee for Geelong is to be a thought leader, an advocate for change and to bring ideas to the world to Geelong, what does that mean? Well, earlier this year we released the report Resilient Geelong, Reasons for Success and Challenges in the Post-COVID Future. Our research paper tracked Geelong's economic and social resilience over 3 decades, and that research paper has been used in evidence to support our advocacy and to respond to government about the changing external environment in which we live. As I said earlier, on your tables is the Future Geelong publication, produced in partnership with the Geelong Advertiser. It's an example of presenting ideas to the people of Geelong and to show how leadership can change and lead change. In the past 2 years, Committee for Geelong has led to the discussion on what we should do in a post-pandemic and what the priorities for the region are. We've brought together other representative groups in Geelong, and again we've learnt the challenge of what it means to get consensus on priorities, or rather not be too worried about consensus on priorities and continue to advocate for those things that we think are important. Committee for Geelong participates in a range of other groups in its advocacy, both the committees for across Australia, but also recently as our work as the secretarial support for the Gateway Cities Alliance, bringing together the cities of Geelong, Newcastle and Wollongong as we lobby for cities and regions looking on a common example of challenges that face our cities. Jim reminded me that it was his pitch, no it wasn't his pitch, it was the Committee for Geelong's pitch, I don't know, to bring the Guggenheim to Geelong. And people remember that. But of course it wasn't a project that was delivered. And we need to realise that Guggenheim was part of the renewal of the industrial city of Bilbao in Spain. It was a deliberate plan to transform a derelict industrial city into one that would attract visitors to see an icon and other things that grew from that. And of course, we're still looking to see what those things are for Geelong. Geelong's own transformation is clear to see. As one of the fastest growing cities in Australia, we've moved from being dependent on large-scale manufacturing to one that's based on education, public health, social insurance, construction, retail trade, and of course manufacturing still sits there as the 5th largest economic contributor to the region. In more recent years, we've seen a range of government agencies call Geelong home, and we're grateful to have them as their presence here: TAC, WorkSafe, NDIA. We're starting to see a changing skyline in Geelong and starting to see significant private investment as that skyline changes. And of course, we're grateful to sit here today, Steve, to see Earth finally being moved on stage 5, a project that we've been long supporters of happening, and we're really pleased to see that come to fruition. We also wish you well in your endeavours as you look at taking Geelong through its next stage of development. There's more Geelong supporters than not in the room, so we'll see how that goes. Brand Geelong is something that the Committee for Geelong's been involved in for a long time. Dan, you're not allowed to comment on that, but it is something that we think is really important that helps sell what the vision of Geelong is. 2022 brings an opportunity to bring that to fruition. It's a frustration to see something like that take so long in gestation, but it's a really important thing as we talk about what the future of Geelong looks like. The brand will market Greater Geelong as a destination to live, work, invest, study and play. And it's something that we think will promote the rich cultural history of Geelong and fulfil its clever and creative future. We continue to embrace and learn about our connection to the land on which we live, and we really value our partnership with the Wadawurrung traditional owners, the First Nations heritage that they bring to all projects and meetings that we have. A place for everyone is about cultural diversity as seen in our community events like the Paco Festa. But we continue to advocate for key community support projects to be delivered, such as the Northern Health Hub that is required to service one of the most disadvantaged areas in our community. Geelong is otherwise home to accessibility and inclusivity through the NDIA and GenU and many other support agencies. I've got to pause there and really call out two guests that we have here today, Lynn Foreman and Linda Blake. Where are you sitting, guys? Thank you. Both have been long supporters of the Committee for Geelong, have been involved in leaders programs. But I couldn't let it go, Linda, without telling the anecdote about how wonderful Linda is, that she is the best unsighted marksman in this room. And my colleague Jeff Gordon will remember the day that we asked Linda to have a shot at some targets on the range, and she shot 4 out of 4. So I just wanted to thank you for your attendance, Linda and Lynn, so thank you. Well, with a new era of innovation upon us, future industries will be about people creating products that shape our lives. The increased demand for critical thinking and analysis, problem solving and active learning is a key mantra that's being led by our learning institutions such as the Gordon TAFE and Deakin University. The Committee for Geelong is about building capacity in our leaders, and it's been the mission of the committee to run the Leaders for Geelong program for over 10 years. And our alumni now ranks over 500 of people that have done that program. By the way, I think there are still places available on next year's program, so Catherine Bell, who's sitting at the back of the room, you can go and talk to her about that for next year. It's a really important part of what we do. I'd like to pause and acknowledge the contribution Frank Costa made to community leadership. In my introduction, I acknowledge Frank's wife Shirley and daughter Jill, who are here today to join us in the celebration of the Committee for Geelong. But I wish to pay tribute to the leadership that Frank showed during his life and the many causes that he supported. He didn't do so for the accolades. He did it because his heart said that he just wanted to give something back. In his honour, the Committee for Geelong has named the Community Leadership Award in his honour, and I'm pleased at this event to announce that the recipient of the award for 2021 is Frances Dawe, the CEO of Bowen Health, and Frances is here today. That award will be presented at the Committee for Geelong Leadership Breakfast in 2022. It's the first year that it will be known as the Frank Costa Community Leadership Award, and in doing so we acknowledge both the contribution that Frank made, but for all of those that have received that award in the past and for those that receive it in the future. We hope that you will honour that memory, and we hope that you continue to assist us in our leadership journey. As Frances said when I told her that she was getting the award, it's not really for her. It's really acknowledgement and thank you for all the work the frontline health workers have continued to support our community, not just in the last 2 years, but in all years ahead. The Committee for Geelong Leaders Program, and I've already said that bit, gosh, what are we doing? The last thing I'm going to talk about is just how things change for the committee. During this year we had debate around our board table around what our strategic plan looked like, and talked about how that might change. And we realised that there was one thing that was really missing in our mission, and that was to talk about climate. The Committee for Geelong has signed up with other committees in terms of committing itself to supporting emissions reduction and taking positive action in relation to climate. We see that the support in emissions reduction, the creation of jobs in the green and circular economies, that future jobs can be delivered, and that through investment in clean technology, sustainable social housing developments, uptake of renewable energy, and developing infrastructure to support public and active transport usage are all things that we must commit to. We're really pleased to support the City of Greater Geelong, who's signed up to a sustainability framework, an action plan that is audited and holds them accountable for their actions. And we support that the community should also do the same. We want to explore the possibility of Geelong becoming a site for beyond zero emissions and a million jobs precinct. It's a real challenge for us, and it's something that we look forward to taking up. We don't shy away from the debate. We don't shy away from promoting big ideas. We've already had a conversation with the Geelong Sustainability Council of having a COP26 style summit in Geelong in 2022 to maximise the opportunities in the region to take a proactive and positive action on climate, managing waste and clean energy. And we look forward to those in the room that can support such an event being there. Geelong is well positioned to rebound as we continue to see incredible growth in our region. The pandemic has presented challenge and opportunity. The Committee for Geelong will start the next 20 years with a commitment to developing its vision for future Geelong, where we will commission research that underpins our advocacy to all levels of government. We will not shirk from the controversial headline that Janet's going to give us later, nor resile from debate that may at times present a contrary view to those in government. That is our role as an apolitical advocacy group, to show a point of difference, to be informed and to be courageous, and we commit ourselves to that over the next 20 years. Thank you. Dan Simmons told me that one of the challenges of events is to manage the papers that the staff give you. So far I've got it under control, mostly, I think. Well, it's my pleasure now to introduce to you Jim Cousins, the founding chair of the Committee for Geelong. Jim's, if you could come up on the stage, I'm going to ask Jim to help me with the acknowledgement of the 10 and 15 and 20-year members of, yes, you can bring the microphones as well, to our certificates. The 10 and 15-year recipients, your certificates are on the tables to collect on your way out. The 20-year recipient certificates we're going to present to you now. Yes, you pop in there, yep. Where's... Righto.
These are all in order. Do we know what we're doing?
We've got no idea, Jim. I think Julie's going to come and help us, but I can't see. Oh, there she is. There you go.
Good, Julie.
While I'm reading out the 10 and 15-year awardees, Jim and Julie are going to sort out the sequence of giving out the 20-year ones. So the following organisations have been members of the Committee for Geelong for 10 years. Western Victorian Primary Health Network, LBDG Developer Proprietary Limited, formerly known as Lovely Banks, Geelong Motors Proprietary Limited, trading as Mercedes-Benz Geelong, Direct Recruitment Proprietary Limited, Cotton On Group, Spire Australia, Executive Travel Management, Coulter Roach, Villawood Properties, Tract Consultants, Truffleduck Proprietary Limited, CSIRO and Novotel Geelong. So thank you to those 10-year supporters for the Committee for Geelong. We have a similar list of 15-year members: AMDA Foundation Limited, FAGS Geelong Proprietary Limited, Geelong Broadcasters Proprietary Limited, Victoria Police, Davinsky Nominees Proprietary Limited, Geelong Arts Centre, Technique Development Pty Proprietary Limited, Ports Victoria, Geelong Gallery, Westpac Banking Corporation, GenU and Transport Accident Commission. So thank you to you. Now, if the running order is correct, they're in alphabetical order. So when I call out the company's name, hopefully there is a representative in the room. I've got some that I'll be able to tell you are not, and I'll just ask you to come up onto the stage and take your certificate from Jim. The first is an apology, John Osborne from Alcoa of Australia. We have Avalon Airport Australia Proprietary Limited. Justin Giddings is going to accept the certificate on their behalf. He is Avalon Airport after all. If you could just step that way, gentlemen, for the photo opportunity. Barwon Health, Francis Diver. Barwon Water, and I think it's Melissa Stevens accepting the certificate on their behalf. Thank you. I have an apology for Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, formerly Bendigo Bank. Costa Property Group, and Shirley, please.
We're not used to these things, are we? Too old? Too old.
Righto, Deakin University, I have Emma Connon. Thank you. Geelong Football Club, Sarah Albin. Simon Kelleher. Thank you. Geelong Grammar School is an apology. Brett Winter, Geelong Port, or Geelong Port, Brett Winter. G-Force Employment Solutions, Keith Bailey. GMHBA Limited, Claire Higgins. Harwood Andrews, Paul Gray. The next one's an apology from Surf Coast Shire. The Gordon TAFE, Joe Armenio, the CEO. Correct. It's a well-oiled machine back here, don't you worry. Tourism Greater Geelong and the Bellarine, formerly Geelong Otway Tourism, Brett Ince, CEO. I think it'd be easy stood up here seeing where everybody is, which you've got no idea, to be honest. The next is an apology from Viva Energy, formerly known as Shell Australia, 20-year member. And the last one, also an apology, West Karen Harvey, Justin O'Brien. Oh, I've missed one. So that's why you have competent staff assisting. St John of God Healthcare, Tanya Whitcomb. Thank you. Thank you to all of our 10, 15 and 20 year, and also our current members. Thank you very much. Well done. 2, number 1. Sorry. Need something to lean on? Right. Well, it's we're right there. We're good. It's with great risk now that we move into the question and answer time. There is a time.
Behave yourself, Jim.
Behave yourself, Jim. There's a time limit. I said the function might run on a bit longer if we let Jim keep going, but we'll control it. That's okay. Jim Cousins is a former member of the Melbourne Museum Board, the Australian Major Performing Arts Group, and the Melbourne Grammar School Council, as well as a former trustee of the Victorian Arts Centre Trust and a former member of the Cairns Indigenous Art Fair Task Force. He's the former chair of the Melbourne Recital Centre, former chair and now founding chairman of the Committee for Geelong, former trustee and deputy president of the National Gallery of Victoria, and a former chair of the Australian Ballet, and has previously chaired the Public Galleries of Victoria, Geelong Performing Arts Centre and Geelong Art Gallery. As you can tell, Jim has an interest in the arts. Jim has chaired and been president of the Geelong Art Gallery Foundation, the NGV Foundation and the Melbourne Recital Centre Foundation, as well as being a member of the Australian Ballet Foundation, Deakin University Foundation. So he's also good at raising money, which is good. Jim was appointed an AO in 2004 and awarded an honorary doctorate of letters from Deakin University in 2004 and appointed Emeritus Trustee, National Gallery of Victoria in 2009. He is a life member of the NGV, the Australian Ballet, the Melbourne Museum, Geelong Art Gallery, Melbourne Recital Centre, and is a Paul Harris Fellow. He's also a life member of the Committee for Geelong as well. So, Jim, they tell me that you started the Committee for Geelong. Can you just remind us as to why you formed it and what was it like in Geelong back in those days?
Well, I was told not to be controversial by my wife.
Right.
So that's a terrible thing to say to me. But first of all, could I just pay a few credits to people around here? When we set off on this journey, we thought it would be about 10 years and then probably wind the place up. I'm very pleased that you've continued this, and I look around the room and there's probably only about 10% of those who I know. So well done for doing that journey. Also, I'd like to thank the various people that were involved in the startup. And this committee today would not be in existence without Peter Dorling. He is the driving force who helped me in the first 10 years, but it was a terrific journey. And it wasn't easy. It was quite difficult at stages, but we got there. Had terrific boards, and the other thing I would like to stress is that it was not easy to actually raise the money, get the members going. And I'll touch on Frank Costa, because I know that question is here. Frank was a great friend of mine, and the reason we started this committee is that Frank and I had, as you can see by what has just been read out, we had dual roles. We didn't only live in Geelong, we actually did a lot of work either around Australia or particularly in Melbourne. So we saw a bigger picture, and really Frank came to me one day and said, listen, Jim, I think we've got to actually do something to Geelong to get it moving. It deserves more than we've got today. And I said, well, Frank, I'm pretty busy. I'm in Melbourne. I've got a business I've got to run to. I really don't have the time for this. And Frank, of course, was a very, very persuasive person. Knew how to twist the arms. You know, if someone had a problem, they'd go to Frank and Frank would say, yes, 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 yes. Just ring Jim. He was a great man for doing the handball, but he was a great person for getting things done. And of course, I sat down with Frank and said, Frank, I am not interested in doing this job unless it's professionally done, unless we have the right amount of money to do it and all the other things that we could achieve. And at the time, Frank was, during his lifetime, always friendly with the Smorgon family, and Jack Smorgon was the chairman of the Committee for Melbourne, And I was quite friendly with the CEO, Janine Kirk, at the time, so we spent time with them and came back to Geelong, and Frank said to me, well, we've got to hire a CEO. And I said, well, we don't have any money, Frank. So he said, well, we've got to go and get a membership. And that's where it started. And when we talked about what the senior members of the organisation were going to have to stump up, I thought it was impossible. But in no time, we actually attracted that membership. And that was after we'd appointed Peter Dorling, who he and I did a hell of a lot of footwork around the place. And I was quite surprised at how easy it was to put that together. And so the journey started. And the journey started because we'd gone through amalgamation in Geelong, and I'm not going to be critical of council, but they didn't have the ability at the time to see the big picture. And as I'd spent most of my life dealing with Spring Street or Canberra, we had the opportunity to do all these strips and get things going. And I'd always had this vision of Geelong that it started as an agricultural community. That collapsed. We went into an industrial community, a very blue-collar town, a town that was dominated by a few families who really didn't want things to change, but it was time to change. It was time that Geelong really found its way as the second city in Victoria. And just a sideline, COVID has really helped you. I mean, they're all escaping Melbourne like they've got the plague up there. So it's been a huge benefit, the COVID situation, to the growth of Geelong. So what did we do? I mean, today the committee is very much different to the way we structured it back in those days. We actually set out to achieve a number of ideas. We put a list together, probably 10 at the time. What could we achieve? And do you want to ask a few more questions about that?
Well, no,
I mean,
everyone talks about...
I did say, they asked me to, would I give a speech? And I said, no, I'll get on a high horse.
We're not doing that very well. So, Jim, it's all very well to talk about the successes. Is there anything that didn't go quite so well?
Well, there were.
That we could learn from?
There were failures, I can tell you that. I mean, maybe there are some successes, though. I mean, I jotted a few down. And the great thing, we had the ability to travel at the time, that you haven't had that ability recently. So Peter and I took overseas regularly and interstate very regularly. And that was a journey to actually get ideas. And I'd had that opportunity that was touched on before with the Guggenheim, and that was with my arts hat on. And I could see the opportunity of what you could do with the arts. And at the time, I was chairing the redevelopment of the National Gallery of Victoria and Federation Square. So I knew a little bit about the big picture, and I thought, you know, let's have a go at a Guggenheim here, because I'd had an association with the director of the Guggenheim. So Peter and I went off to Bilbao, and that's an amazing story of what the Guggenheim did for Bilbao. The other reflection on that is, what has Mona done for Tasmania? So if we got the Guggenheim, and it was just the people who couldn't see the big picture in Geelong who killed us in the end. And the funny thing is, I just deregistered the Guggenheim company in Australia last week, which is very sad. And it's probably a month didn't go by over the last 20 years where people would say, oh, why don't you come and have a crack in our city? Well, you know, too hard. And if you're talking about the arts, and I'm looking at art gallery representatives here, I've got a challenge for the council, because recently I've been doing some work in Queensland, both in northern Queensland and in southern Queensland, and on the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast have just opened a gallery over the last 12 months there that is as large as Federation Square. At the same time, they opened a sound shell that probably is considerably better than the Myer Music Bowl. Total amount spent on that to date is nearly 100 million, the two projects. And the Mayor said to me, "Oh, I'm sick of these theatres here." I've talked to the other councillors and they think this arts has got a bit going for it. He said, "We're going to pull those theatres down. I've got another 500 million for them." I said, "Tom, where have you got all this money from?" Self-funded by the council. Not $1 from the state and not $1 from the feds. Interesting, Geelong. You've got to get a move on. I know they've got a bigger rate roll, but they get the picture. They certainly get the picture. So the great thing we achieved, I think, was the ring road, and everyone takes credit for the ring road. But I said to Peter, I will tell the story of the ring road because it is one you can put down to the committee for Geelong, whether everyone else thinks they did it. I'd had this feeling that there should be a ring road for many years. There were some others in politics who didn't think it was a good idea, and I won't cast aspersions.
Not my mum.
No. Anyway, I had a challenge thrown at me by Steve Bracks, who said, "Well, Jim, I've got, I can't remember whether it was 250 million or 275 million, that if you can get a matching amount of money from the federal government, we can do it." So we went off, as you duly have to do, to see Stuart and Stuart MacArthur, and Stuart said, "Well, I'm chairman of the Roads Committee for the federal government and it's a very low priority, Jim." Oh God, I thought, that's a great start. So I had to go to Canberra on other matters. One was the arts and one was to do with football, with Frank. To do with the first stage, I think it was, of the stadium, wasn't it, Peter? And we got to Canberra and we went to see Stuart. Got the same reply, and so I said, "Well, I have to go down and see Rod Kemp about," and he was the Minister for Arts and Sport at the time, the amount of money I had to get for the arts for Melbourne, and we had to talk about the football club. So we had this long talk with Rod, and Rod said, what other problems do you have, Jim?" And I told him about the road. He said, "Well, hasn't Stuart dealt with that?" And so, no. And he said, "Well, why don't we ring David Hawker? Because it would be a great benefit to David Hawker, who was the Speaker at the time." And so we tramped off to see David Hawker, who's got an office, Sarah, as big as this room. And David Hawker sat us down and thought it was a pretty good idea, and Frank sitting there in the corner. "Just don't say any more, Frank, because you've got your football club money. That's all done." And David Hawker said, "Oh, I think we should go and see the Prime Minister." Oh, that's pretty tough stuff. So he rang Tony Nutt, who was the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, and Tony said, "Oh, the Prime Minister's here, come around." So off we went and sat down. I thought this was probably impossible to do. So we sat down and we had to brief Tony Nutt again. We'd briefed everyone by this stage.
I'm coming to see you.
No. And anyway, Tony Nutt said, "Oh, I'll go and see the Prime Minister and bring him in." So he came in and said, "Why haven't I heard about this, Stuart?" This is absolutely true, isn't it, Pete? Just absolutely bizarre. And we briefed the Prime Minister and off we went. I thought, well, that's the end of that. The next day, Peter got the call. The Prime Minister wants to come to Geelong to have a look at this proposal, which he duly did, and we had a big dinner out at Petterville. And before that, we went to the art gallery, and there were the usual 400 demonstrators outside. So we all ducked out the back door, left them outside screaming, and we went off to Petterville. And Tony Nutt said, Oh, the Prime Minister doesn't stay long. He just has, something pretty small, and he'll have a drink and then he'll go. And he's got the plane out at Avalon. So we put the story again. We'd put a nice couple of members sitting beside him, two ladies, I won't mention their names, who chatted him up all night. They were brief. Yeah, they were brief. And anyway, in due course, the Prime Minister left at 1:30 in the morning.
Those are the days.
It was a pretty ugly night, I can tell you. Peter got the call the next day, the money's yours. And that is an absolute true story about something we achieved.
Well, Jim, I think on that note you're going to have to finish. Thank you very much. That's it. You're done. Oh well, I did say to the organisers that we'd blow the time frame, but that's quite all right. Jim, Jim, I really appreciate your presence here today and for you to share those few anecdotes. Jim has never been short of reminding us that we have to continue to be courageous and to ask for what we want, and we will try and to continue to live and honour that legacy. So thank you for your time here today. Well, Cara, I think we're just going to continue on, yeah? Let's go. I'd like to introduce just a short video which has been compiled by Hal Media to celebrate the Committee for Geelong's 20 years of thought, leadership and advocacy. So we hope you enjoy this short story of Geelong as the video traces the themes of future Geelong publication and the growth of Geelong in the past 20 years. Oh, now I'm in trouble. Oh, this is the bit where I have to make it up. No, I found it. Well, it's my great pleasure now to introduce to you Janet Dore as our special guest speaker for this afternoon. Originally a town planner, Janet Dore has had a very successful career in senior management in local government and government agencies. She served on the Victorian Planning Appeals Tribunal and led the City of Ballarat as its CEO, Newcastle City Council as its General Manager, and is a former CEO of the TAC and an alumni of Deakin University. She's one of the first people to complete their MBA program at Deakin in 1984. She currently holds positions for the State Insurance Regulatory Authority in New South Wales, the Municipal Association of Victoria, WorkCare, and is a municipal monitor for the Shire of Strathbogie. Last but by no means least, she was the former Deputy Chair of the Committee for Geelong. Please welcome Janet Dore.
Thank you, Clive, and thank you for the great honour of being here today. Now, they told me to speak for 30 minutes. I can assure you I'm not going to do that. So I'll cut out all the references to Jim Cousins, Peter Dorling, Michael Betts, Rebecca Casson and current management, but just to say that I'm very proud to be here. I'd like to acknowledge Clive as Chair, board members of committee, Senator Sarah Henderson, Christine Cousins MP, Libby Coker MP, and Shirley and Jill Costa. And my abiding memory of working with Frank was one football breakfast at North Melbourne, as you used to have to do, you know. Gosh, it was a hard job. We were advocating for the NDIA to be here in Geelong. And I'll never forget the look on Tony Abbott's face when he saw Frank Costa and I marching across the room to go and talk to him. And it wasn't me that frightened him. He didn't know who the hell I was. It was Frank, and he knew it was going to be serious. And again, he was influential in achieving that further centre of social insurance that we have here that's given so many people so many wonderful jobs and opportunities. So I'd like to acknowledge the Wathaurong people and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I was a very lucky newly appointed CEO to be able to oversee the move of the TAC to Geelong, because everybody had done the hard work before I'd even got there. The planning was fantastic. We turned on the lights and the phones and the computers at 10 o'clock that first morning, and it was a huge effort. But we are now in a position where I think committee needs to heed advice of what new CEOs are often told, and that is, what got you here is not going to get you there. Everything starts again. You have to lift. You have to take different views. You have to think differently. You have to consult differently. And now that our world is completely changed by the pandemic and the challenges of recovery and responses for a different future, we need to reframe. And I know you've got a good strategic base for it. One of my favourite commentators, Bernard Salt. Who reads Bernard Salt in this room? Yay! Who knew demography could be so sexy? I think the way he presents is fantastic, Peter. I'm sorry you're a Neanderthal in that regard, but you know, that's... The 2020s, he said, the 2020s will not deliver a restitution of our previous way of life. That is gone forever. The winners will be those who adapt to life's new constraints and opportunities. The losers will be those sidelined as they wait forlornly for things to return to normal. Just let that sink in. I mean, it's easy to gloss over. But I believe we are at a fundamental inflection point that requires a different approach to our future. To reframe the agenda, to understand the context, and aggressively pursue sound positions based on policy and research, and Clive mentioned that in his talk. I think overwhelmingly it's clear that the challenges of our time are COVID recovery and climate change, but there's also some concern over the current model of capitalism, which is being expressed by many leading economists and political commentators. And no, I am not a socialist or a green or any of those things, but I read widely. And when you see in the Australian Financial Review, and see, I read the right-wing press, you know, I always have the Australian. I had a friend who worked in a political office, well, Catherine King's office in Ballarat, who said to the staff, well, why don't you get the Australian every day? And they said, oh, no, we wouldn't read that. She said, you've got to know what the opposition's doing, so you've got to read the Australian. I thought it was a good comment. So when the AFR, and it was my partner actually who said it, this includes people like Gary Stevenson, who in his words, this is reported in the AFR, made loads of money as a trader in London. One of those Cockney Essex fellas. And as reported, he says, capitalism's over. That's a pretty big call, and I don't necessarily agree with him at all, but I think the very fact that somebody who's made enough money to never work again, and who is now part of the Patriotic Millionaires Club, I kid you not, he is concerned that capitalism as we operate it is worthy of some tinkering. Now, it may be an extreme view, but if you look at people like Thomas Piketty and Mariana Mazzucato who've written books seriously challenging our current system, but also suggesting alternatives. So I'll ask you to keep your minds open. So I want to address the 3 Cs. Hopefully I'll do it quicker than we'd intended. For the committee, for the next 30 years, not 20, 30. Because I thought it was the 30th anniversary today. I had my original draft, I was congratulating you on 30 years, so I was way ahead of myself. So first, COVID recovery. It's given us all a real shock, but it has reminded us, I think, of the importance of family and community. And in Buninyong, where I live, I've experienced this firsthand. I've been on my own for the last 5 months, my partner being overseas, and people have been really, come for a walk with us, come for a coffee with us. Neighbours have called in like they never have before. And I really hope we can keep that kind of basis. And again, Bernard Salt has warned against complacency. If we presume that the prosperity and security underpinning our way of life will somehow continue into the future, we're very wrong. Many things have fractured and divided us during the last couple of years, but he says, if ever there was a time for unity, for vision, for self-sacrifice, for cool-headed, rational thinking and action, it's now. In other words, leadership. But where will this come from? Now, I've warned the politicians that I might be a bit controversial here, and you wanted the headlines, so, So I'm going to say, in conjunction with a lot of other people, federal government seems focused on winning the next election, and at the state level, we've seen a sometimes unseemly chest-beating and insular thinking from premiers. When the Business Council of Australia is the thought leader engaging with the Australian Conservation Foundation, the World Wildlife Fund and the Australian Council of Trade Unions to produce a report on opportunities for nearly 400,000 clean export jobs, we could be forgiven for being bemused about national policy debates. The recent turnaround in climate change policy prior to the Glasgow meeting was not the best look Australia has ever had, and it did make us the target of some global scorn. Nevertheless, there are wonderful examples developing in terms of opportunities if we can connect some dots. For example, developing solar plants with Indigenous labour, developing a caring approach to recovery based on women and their needs, using mining expertise for renewable energy minerals, and especially the focus on women and their needs because they've disproportionately lost jobs during the pandemic, and that has been documented. In fact, last week or the week before, Sam Mostyn, the chair of Chief Executive Women, gave a compelling narrative on that topic at the National Press Club. And Kate Jenkins recently submitted her report to the Prime Minister last week, documenting a culture that needs, like all our organisations, from time to time, some improvement. So it is time to rethink. And apparently, there are whispers of equality fatigue amongst some circles. Well, I say too bloody bad. We need an inclusive workforce based on merit, especially in a time of skills shortages. Hospitality businesses have even had to rethink casual work to secure quality staff. And I want to re-emphasise that equality is not just a women's thing. It's about age, ability and ethnicity, all needing attention and commitment. The second C. Here again, we have a policy embarrassment extending over years. And I spare nobody in this. From the infamous carbon tax by PM Gillard, PM Turnbull's inability to achieve, actually it was the Environment Minister inability to achieve, PM Abbott's reluctance, despite Frydenberg's efforts as Environment Minister, and just recently that scramble for the 2050 target to enable attendance at COP26 in Glasgow. And it's not as if it's a new issue, as that trail of initiatives shows. Even when I was at Newcastle City Council and 30 years ago nearly, they set up a unit that was aiming at reducing greenhouse gases in the city and started with their own municipal buildings using very simple measures. So councils around the world have been undertaking things like that to show leadership in the absence of firm policies. Now, global summits like COP26, and I look forward to your COP26 in Geelong, are big on ambition, but are often watered down on commitment. And we know they make big announcements, and then the working groups get together and there's all the trade-offs. But whilst Australia is responsible for only 1% of global emissions, greenhouse emissions, this is a dry country prone to bushfires, drought and flood, and surely then we should focus on a sustainable country in a sustainable world. It's just common sense. And what I find really interesting is this Business Council of Australia document of this is not the consultant's report, their own document. Their policy priorities for this year include that Australia sets a national goal of net zero emissions by 2050 and, this part's important, establishes nationally consistent regulations to drive private sector investment in new technologies to achieve this goal, build new export industries and improve environmental outcomes. So consistency. Member companies such as Wesfarmers, BHP, they're setting their own targets to contribute to that goal without waiting for government policy. But it can be a risky business getting ahead of government policy, as Victoria found out recently with the battery initiative, where the Australian Energy Market Commission instituted network charges on battery storage. So things can come and hit you just when you think you're doing the right thing. Even stabilising the electricity grid seems a no-brainer, given all the household solar installations and rapidly increasing wind farms, especially in our areas. But AusNet's transmission line between Western Victoria and Melbourne has run into huge community opposition. And undergrounding is always dismissed as too expensive. But investment in infrastructure requires long-term thinking. And in Europe, ambitious projects get done. Has anybody else seen the SBS on-demand series, The Bridge? Well, if you haven't, do watch it. I think it's fabulous, but, you know, it's a bit gory. But it's centred on the bridge between two countries, Denmark and Sweden. It carries cars, high-speed rail, with a backdrop of wind turbines in the ocean. That's a big investment. It's been there for a while. So infrastructure for the future is critical, as Clive said, for low-emission transport, and Geelong Port should be congratulated for its initiative with a hydrogen hub. It's in good company with Andrew Forrest, who's charging into hydrogen fuel with great passion. And other high-wealth individuals, Bill Gates and George Soros, are investing in nuclear fission. That's the cleaner nuclear option. Problems of transitioning into the Australian cleaner future are symptomatic of inconsistent or absent policy leadership. And this is acknowledged again by the Australian Financial Review editorial, saying that the coming federal poll is likely to be only a triumph of politics over policy. And there is something there about the level of debate and discussion. It's the what is in it for me thing, rather than what is best for all of us thing. Government is hard enough when petty and personal issues dominate the headlines, but in times of crisis, like war, epidemic and poverty, people look for clarity and vision. Dictators fill vacuums and democracy is put at risk, and we've seen that spectacle. But But ask the 60% or more of young people in Australia who do not rate democracy. Surveys show they don't think it's important. And I have to say, changing leaders at will by both parties haven't done much to build confidence in the system. The committee must therefore research, think and advocate for serious action, new technologies and policy positions to save our planet, as I'm sure you will do. The Accenture report that I referred to earlier, commissioned jointly by those ACF, ACTU, BCA and WWF, is a great starting point. It cites clean export opportunities in two sectors: energy and minerals, and technology and services. Now, I won't list them, there's 3 under each, but I'm conscious of the time. But strong regional leadership can make a difference, and with Geelong Port's hydrogen hub and Deacon's battery round table, I think it's called, you're going in the right direction, obviously. So, I come to the third C. I'm getting towards the end, Sarah. Last part. Yeah, well, that's good. Third, capital. I'm all for debate. Classically, the definition of capitalism is built around shareholder interests. But the BCA, Business Council of Australia, aims to ensure Australia is economically strong to support a fair, free and inclusive society for all Australians. In other words, the economy serves society. It also states that the role of business is to generate returns for shareholders over the medium to long term, and that doing this requires businesses to be good corporate citizens and for big and small business to work together across our cities and regions, which I'm sure this committee is very conscious of. Now, I don't think it's any surprise that the BCA CEO, who's been there for a decade, was formerly a distinguished public servant. So I just wonder how much influence she's had over this private sector mob. But I think it's true to say that thinking about contributions by business to society is changing. And her recent speech, this is Jennifer Westergott, reported in The Australian, emphasised the leadership by businesses and the risk of outrunning government policy, which may be a further indicator of policy inertia. My questions, therefore, from where and why has this breadth of thinking come from, and these normally opposed groups, or often opposed groups, come together on it? It may be that increasing polarisation within societies, due to, amongst other things, poverty, extreme wealth, refugee crises, small government ethos, Indigenous matters and women's fury. Yeah, see, I'm not going to let anybody get away with this. I say fury because of the year we have had where women have spoken up, and only this week a full-page advertisement calling for change to enable women's participation in the workplace, signed by prominent women including Ming Long AM, Honourable Julie Bishop, Honourable Kate Ellis, Sam Mostyn AO and Carol Schwartz AO, to name but a few. I think they're a pretty impressive mob together. So I think we do have a culmination of issues which are urgent, and even banks are showing recognition of the climate issue. For example, ANZ declared in October last year that they'd do no more loans to the coal industry, notwithstanding they've probably got billions of loans out there already, but they're saying no more. And I'm very proud of what's going on across the Tasman in New Zealand, because we have a niece who works in sustainable finance for the Bank of New Zealand. She was involved in the issuing of the first sovereign green bonds, and the bank has become a member of the Net Zero Banking Alliance, requiring serious targets to be met and published. She's what I fondly call a green, new age capitalist. There's your headline. The economist that's gaining a lot of traction that I mentioned earlier, Mariana Mazzucato, has written about a mission economy, a moonshot guide to changing capitalism, based on 4 crisis points, and I will go through these. First, finance is financing fire. FIRE being an acronym for finance, insurance and real estate. In other words, it's doing business with itself and the world keeps going round. Secondly, business is focused on short-term quarterly returns. Third, the warming planet. And fourth, as she says this, government's tinkering, not leading. Her proposal is for a restructure of capitalism so that it becomes inclusive, sustainable and driven by innovation, and for a reinvention of government. Who wouldn't agree with that? Is it wildly ambitious, unrealistic or totally impractical? I suspect her ideas have sound foundations, especially when you hear even the Future Fund canvassing paradigm shifts involving lower growth, lower interest rates, corporate earnings challenges, climate change, deglobalisation and technological disruption. This is the Future Fund I'm talking about. This is recognition indeed of a different world ahead. So Committee for Geelong, together with its colleagues, needs to translate these bold ideas to this region using all the assets and strengths locally available. Deakin University, Gordon, Airport, Port, manufacturing capabilities, workforce skills, health and medical expertise, and outstanding environmental attributes. In summary, the world has changed for worse or for better. The committee must understand and meet the challenges ahead. Opportunities within the 3 Cs discussed here, COVID, climate and capitalism, are there for grasping. Not just doing necessary things, but doing them differently and better for a fair, free and inclusive society with a strong economy. I'm sure you will succeed, not just because of past performance, but because of who you all are. I wish you good luck.
Senator Henderson's asked for a right of reply, and we've refused. Because if we were going to be inclusive, we'd have to give Libby, Christine, we probably, the City of Greater Geelong probably want a right of reply too, so we're not going to do that. Janet, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today and for you to present that challenge to us in terms of what we should be looking for the next 30 years. And we really appreciate your time here today. We appreciate the work that you put into that speech. I do hope that you give us a printed copy so we can use it appropriately or inappropriately, and we look forward to hearing from you again. So once again to Janet, thank you very much. Well, thank you for your patience here today. I've got a couple of things just to finish off with. I have one important correction to make. I'm so caught up looking at the grand stadium out there and realising that not only can you play football, you can play soccer out there, and there's a great development that's happening at the end here. But it's not the Geelong Football Club that's doing Stage 5, it's actually the Cardinia Park Stadium Trust. So my apologies. It actually was in my notes, but as you might appreciate, standing up here reading notes is sometimes a bit of a challenge. But we do thank the work that the Stadium Trust is doing, and we do look forward to the completion of that Stage 5, and a really important addition to one of the iconic stadiums in Australia. So thank you very much. Well, only a couple of things left for me to do. Importantly, if you're sitting on a chair that has a green sticker on it, if the green sticker hasn't come off, then you get to take the flowers on the table home. So, Shirley, I think that's your chair actually. So, and if the sticker's falling off, then you'll just have to fight amongst yourselves. I'd just like to thank my fellow board directors who are here today. I have Deputy Chair Justin Giddings from Avalon Airport, Treasurer Julie Hunter. I have retiring board member Joe Murdoch, who's leaving Geelong to go and pursue opportunities in the northeast of Victoria. So, Joe, once again, we wish you well for that journey. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Kirsten Kilpatrick for her contribution to the board over many years. She's retired from the board this year, and Matt Dickens has also stood down from the board this year, presenting an opportunity for the Committee for Geelong at the start of its next 30 years to look at a little bit of invigoration. And I'm pleased to announce that Anne O'Loughlin, the Managing Principal of Coulter Roach, Richard Hill, Executive Advisor of GHD, and Rebecca Bartell, who's the Senior Commercial and Strategic Partnerships Research Manager with Deakin University, have all agreed to join the board of the Committee for Geelong, and we welcome them to help us with our journey and to develop our next strategic framework. So congratulations to them. It's a great honour to lead this function today and have the opportunity to reflect on the past 20 years. I've met and known each of the chairs of the Committee for Geelong, and perhaps if I could just indulge us for 1 minute and ask for them to perhaps stand and just join me here on the stage. My immediate predecessor, Dan Simmons, his predecessor, Michael Betts, and his predecessor, Jim Cousins, if you could just join us up here. Well, Janet, thank you for that. You will have noticed that we do have equity on our board, and in fact by adding Jen in there as the CEO, we in fact have balance in one way. It's not an argument that I'm going to engage in. I don't think it's worth my while. Look, again, I'd like to invite Peter Dore onto the stage. Peter was the founding CEO of the Committee for Geelong. Peter? Peter still makes his contribution to Geelong, and we're very grateful for his ongoing advice. Peter served as CEO from 2001 to 2012. Rebecca Casson, who is an apology today, who many of you will know, served as the CEO from 2013 to 2018. She actually used the Committee for Geelong as a springboard to go into a senior role as the CEO of the Master Builders Association of Victoria. And we thank Rebecca for her contribution. And of course, Jennifer Cromarty, as I've mentioned, has been the CEO since 2019 to now, and we thank her, all previous CEOs, all past chairs for their contribution. So thank you.
Thanks, Claude. Thank you very much.
You're supposed to be giving the money to us, but anyway. Jim has already challenged us to have the controversial headline for tomorrow. Janet, thank you for doing that. Jim, I should point out to you that headline in contemporary terms means that it's already been tweeted. So we look forward to that debate on the Twitter sphere by the end of today. Events like this could not be possible without the work of a lot of people, and I would like to make a special thank you to the Committee for Geelong staff, who have carried the load of the past few weeks in Jen's absence and have even overcome a number of hiccups to be here today. Thank you so much to Caroline O'Keefe for her management of the event. I think we've done pretty well, Caro, thank you. To Julie Parker, our communications manager. Julie's been filling in for Holly Earl. Holly is actually here, the one standing at the back there with her young baby Walter. So thank you. To Kaz, to Jules, to Catherine, to Jen, thank you all for your hard work. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. That concludes the official proceedings today. Do feel free to stay. I think the room's open till 3 o'clock for you to mingle and talk to people, have another glass of wine or whatever. We do appreciate your support. We do look forward to seeing you at events as we return to face-to-face events next year. And those that can and want to come to the Leaders for Geelong graduation dinner next week, please talk to one of the staff. So thank you for your time here today. Thank you.